It's not. Where's TJ? Look. It's not on. Just give me a second so I can just.
No problem.
Good morning. Okay. Yeah. We are live now.
Awesome.
Yeah. So good morning, everyone. My name is Vinencia Siririka. I would like to welcome everybody to our weekly Wednesday webinar. I would like to also acknowledge and welcome my ED, Ms. Maria Nangola. Today's topic will be unpacking the concept of citizen satisfaction for Namibia. We are streaming on all our social media sites, platforms. And now I'll allow my co-presenter to introduce himself and to then start with his presentation. Mr. Victor, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Siririka. Good morning, everyone who's in attendance, and thank you very much for the opportunity. My name is Victor Musiwa. I'm a certified customer experience professional. I'm currently working for MultiChoice Namibia as a customer experience specialist. And I've taken interest in this course to see how I can unpack the concept of citizen satisfaction, what it means for the country, what it means for the citizens, and what it means for the service providers, which are offices, ministries, and agencies that assist in the delivery of public services to the nation at large. So in terms of our presentation today, I'll run the introduction. And then after the introduction, I'll discuss what is customer satisfaction, anchoring it into what we are doing in the normal business environment where a customer is the source of revenue and profit for the business. And then I'll move on to talk about what citizen satisfaction is and how it relates to the well-grounded concept of customer satisfaction. I'll then talk about what the government is trying to do, or what the strategy for the government is in terms of customer satisfaction, citizen satisfaction for Namibia. And then to just bring it home, I will unpack the concept in terms of what is an overall citizen satisfaction, and how do we, as a country, how do we start working towards getting a single number that represents how satisfied our citizens are, and what does it mean when citizens are satisfied in terms of the economy, the political stability of the country, and in terms of their choices when they make voting choices for which government or which party should be ruling the country, or which leaders should be given the power or the authority to continue delivering the services to the country. Okay, I'm going to allow questions. So anybody that is interested in asking questions, you can use the chat box. Ms. Siririka will assist with the questions. I can take questions at any time through the webinar. and I will allow for people to ask questions at any time as we are unpacking this concept. So it's not going to be a lecture where you just have to listen. You can participate by asking questions as we progress. Okay, why the collaboration with NIPAM? So we are collaborating with NIPAM because NIPAM is mandated to engage with government institutions that are responsible for delivering services. And in terms of this, we're talking about ministries, we are talking about agencies, and we are talking about offices that are charged with delivery of public services. And because NIPAM is charged with the education of or development of capacity within these entities, we saw it fit to partner with NIPAM as Touchpoint Management Institute. And that brings me to the point of what Touchpoint Management Institute is. It's a local company that is interested in accelerating the acceptance of customer experience across the country. And when we're talking about customer experience, we're saying, how do customers perceive the service that is delivered to them by service providers? We are much more involved in the private sector, but we saw that the majority of services that are being received in Namibia includes those from public sector. So we saw it fit to partner with NIPAM and say, why don't we start having conversations about how public service providers are providing service to the citizens, and what is the rate of satisfaction with those services. And in essence, that is where citizen satisfaction comes in. So it's really a conversation about when public service providers are delivering services, are the recipients of these services happy with the services or not? And this is the focus of this conversation. In my introduction, I indicated that I'm a certified customer experience management professional. This is a qualification that is given by an association called Customer Experience Professionals Association, CXPA. It's based in the United States. And it's just a formalization of somebody's knowledge and experience in terms of what is required to manage and deliver the benefits of customer experience to the business enterprise or to any organization that is interested in doing that. So why is customer experience important? Customer experience is important because it drives customer behavior, it drives human behavior. So if anything that we are doing in life requires a third party, requires another entity to deliver that service, we only continue to engage with that party if we are happy with the way the service is delivered. And for any organization that wants to continue to exist, for any organization that wants to grow and that wants to remain relevant, it needs to make sure that the customers or the recipient of the services that the organization exists for are valuing those services, and they continue to remain loyal. By this, I mean they have to keep choosing to stay with that organization instead of going to the competition. Now, this is a bit different for public service, because if you are not happy with NAM Water or let's say City of Windhoek in terms of the quality of the water that they deliver, you don't have much option. You can't drill a borehole in your house in Windhoek West so that you can have your own water. You don't have much choice. And because you don't have much choice, you are confined to what the government has mandated as service providers for that type of service. If you are not happy with the train service that TransNamib delivers, you cannot just put your own train on the road. Or if you are not happy with the road infrastructure, the road from Okahanja to Windhoek, you cannot build your own road. And because of this, citizens are sort of confined to the services that are being delivered by the mandated institutions that are supposed to deliver these. So in terms of customer satisfaction, customers have a choice. They can move to the competition. But in terms of citizen satisfaction, citizens do not have a choice. And because they do not have a choice, we need to really focus as NIPAM, as public service providers, to improve the quality of service and to ensure that the minimum standard of service that is being delivered is acceptable for the recipients of these citizens, which are of these services, which are the citizens. Okay, before I proceed to the next slide, I would like to open it up for questions. If anybody has a question. Okay. So let's dive deeper into this concept of customer satisfaction. Well, customer satisfaction is a very complex phenomenon. It's a complex concept, and what makes it complex is not really because the satisfaction itself is complex. It's because the way we define satisfaction is based on the expectation that the human being involved in the process, or the human being who is evaluating their satisfaction, does this in their mind. So it's a mental process. So if I go and buy, if I go and buy kapana, I have an expectation, and my level of satisfaction is going to be determined by the experience that I have after I have the kapana, and I compare that with what I expected. So the satisfaction is a result of the difference between what I expected and the perception that I got after I consumed the product or the service, or after the interaction that I had with the service. If I go to the bank and I expect that I'll be done with my banking within 30 minutes. And when I go to the bank, I find there is a long queue, and an interaction that was supposed to be 30 minutes takes me over an hour. I'm not going to be satisfied with the service that I received. But if I go to the bank, I expected to complete my transaction in 30 minutes, and somehow the bank enables me to do it in 15 minutes. The bank would have exceeded my expectation, and that would result in me being satisfied as a customer. So if we take the scenario of a bank, every person will have an expectation that is different. One person would expect a transaction to take 5 minutes. Another person would expect 15 minutes. Another person would expect 30 minutes. So their satisfaction then is going to be different for these people, because one person is going to be happy with it because the bank delivered the service within the time that they expected that it would be delivered. And if the bank, for example, is only able to deliver the transaction within 20 minutes, the customer who expected 5 minutes is going to be satisfied with the service. The customer who expected 15 minutes is going to be satisfied with the service. But the customer who expected 30 minutes. Sorry, I have to, I'm having it the other way around. If the bank is only able to deliver a service in 20 minutes, the customer who expected 5 minutes is not going to be happy with that service, because they are waiting an extra 15 minutes for the transaction to be completed. A customer who expected 15 minutes is not going to be happy with that transaction, because they are going to have to wait for an extra 5 minutes before the transaction is completed. But a customer who expected 30 minutes is going to be happy with the transaction, because they would have been saved 10 minutes and the transaction will be concluded before the time that they expected that it would take. So again, you have now an organization that is delivering a very standard service, and you still have a challenge where some customers are happy with the service and some customers are not happy with the service. And this is why we are saying customer satisfaction is a very complex phenomenon. So it's very difficult and challenging for an organization to standardize the way they deliver a service and continuously meet what the customer expects, because every customer is going to have a different expectation. We are not like homogeneous where everybody expects things to be a certain way. You might be thinking, so what can organizations do to address this? One thing that really works very well is to make sure that customers are guided towards what to expect. So there is a concept of a customer service charter. A customer service charter outlines the expectations that customers should have with the service that they're about to receive from a service provider. So in the situation, the scenario that I explained about the bank, what the bank could do, for example, is they could indicate very clearly to say, please expect to wait for 20 minutes when you receive our service. Now, when they do that, it guides the customer to know exactly at what point they should, first, it guides the customer on what to expect. And secondly, the customer is then able to only start complaining after the time that the service provider has provided lapses. So if the bank says you wait for 20 minutes, I cannot go at 15 minutes and say, I've been waiting here for 15 minutes and I didn't receive the service yet, or my transaction is not concluded. People can only then start complaining after 20 minutes. So that's one of the mechanisms that service providers can use. But why is it important that we need to make sure that customers are satisfied? Well, customer satisfaction is a very strong determinant of customer loyalty. And it makes sense, because if I'm happy with the service, the way the service is delivered, next time I have to look for that same type of service, I'm going to go to the last place where the service was delivered in a way that satisfied what I expected. And what does this do to the organization? What this does to the organization is you have repeat customers. You have customers who continuously keep coming back to you for the same services. And that's the way you make your profit, because you have repeat purchases and you have repeat interactions, and you can charge more for that, and customers will buy more and you sell more products. Okay, if there is no questions, I don't see any hands up, so I'll proceed to the next slide. Okay, so let's talk about citizen satisfaction. I touched on this earlier, where I was talking about how citizens are confined to the mandated service providers. If you'd like to apply for a passport, you don't have an option. You cannot do it outside the Ministry of Home Affairs that is mandated to issue passports to the Namibian public. And if the service at Ministry of Home Affairs is not that good, you don't have an option. Now, what makes this complex is that element that you have a single service provider, and customers do not, citizens in this case, do not have an option to choose to get the service from someone, from somebody else. If the customer is not happy with the service that is being provided, they do not have recourse. Okay, they might complain, they might go to the newspapers, they might go to the radio, they might go to social media and complain. But there's no alternative of getting the service from somewhere else. Another thing that makes citizen satisfaction more complex is that when we look at citizen satisfaction, we are looking at the whole population of Namibia as citizens, and we are saying they are all receiving public services from different public service providers. So it could be a clinic, it can be road infrastructure, it can be business registration, it can be passports, it can be birth certificates, it can be hospitals, it can be radio services. It could be newspapers like New Era. It can be university. So every service provider, every public service provider is then contributing towards what we are trying to achieve as citizen satisfaction, or what we are trying to measure. So this makes this concept very complex, because we cannot say citizen satisfaction for only one element of society, or for only one element of service provision. We have to come up with one single number that says, I'll get to it, where the last measure that we had was at 54%. So when we say 54%, is that representative of all the citizens of Namibia in terms of all the services that they receive from all the public service providers? So measuring citizen satisfaction makes it a very complex concept, but there is tools and there is processes that can be used to achieve this. And this is why I thought it's quite important that we unpack this concept and we say, okay, fine, if we're gonna come up with a number that represents how Namibian citizens are satisfied with the services that they receive from public service providers, how is that number formulated? And is it representative enough? Is it valid? And is it reliable? So that's what we are going to be unpacking now. And why it is important. Think of it, you are a Namibian citizen. When you complain about government, you complain about government in a generic sense most of the time because you feel the government is not doing enough. But your experiences are guided by the interactions that you have had with specific government sectors. It's not necessarily the whole government, but it's specific sectors within the government that you have interacted with, and they failed to meet your expectation. So again, the concept of expectation becomes very important. What do citizens expect from the government? And how does the government institutions organize themselves to ensure that they can deliver on what those expectations are? Okay, I can see there is a question in the question box. Okay, let me just read out this question. It's from Jonette Aces. Thank you for the informative session. What would you suggest would be an appropriate customer satisfaction target given the complex expectation from customers? Okay, brilliant question. I'm going to touch on it. Let me just conclude this slide and then I'll go back because it was more around customer satisfaction. Okay. So citizen satisfaction is a very strong determinant of public trust. And public trust is very relevant when we start thinking about the biggest source of revenue for the government. Our biggest source of revenue for the government is tax. So the citizens pay tax to government with the hope or with the trust that that tax that they pay is going to be used to improve their lives. So road infrastructure, education, schools, university, health facilities, the quality of health, everything that is being provided is a public good to the citizens of the country. Is most of the time, or the majority of it is funded through tax. And there is a strong relationship between public trust and tax adherence. So what happens is when people trust that the government is doing well with the money that they are entrusting them with through taxes, they are more willing to pay tax. And if they are more willing to pay tax, the government is then having a sizable kitty through which they can fund the provision of services to the public through the offices, ministries, and agencies. And that will generally then continue to improve the quality of life for the citizens. So it's almost like a a reinforcing loop where once we improve public trust, we are going to get more taxes. And when we get more taxes, we can use those taxes to improve the quality of life of the citizens, and which is going to improve the public trust. Okay, let me go back to the question about what would you suggest would be an appropriate customer satisfaction target given the complex expectations from customers. So there's two ways of doing this. Some organizations, what they are doing is they first establish a baseline. So a baseline means you have to understand what is the level of satisfaction that your customers have. So when you start, you wouldn't know what to expect. And so for Namibia, for example, there was a citizen satisfaction survey that was done in 2017. And the citizen satisfaction rating for Namibia was at 54%. So all things being equal, if this was measured the right way, and we can consider 54% to be a valid and reliable measure of citizen satisfaction for Namibia, that becomes your baseline. And if that becomes your baseline, then the question that you have to ask yourself is 54% good enough? And then for your next cycle, which can be the next month or the next year or the next quarter, you can then decide, well, 54% is not a good number for us. We want to push to 60. And what can we realistically do within the next 6 months or within the next year to push towards 60? So that is that type of setting a target is defined based on where you are. So you are starting from a well-established baseline, and you are using that to move forward. What other people do is to say, what is an industry benchmark, or what is commonly accepted to be a good customer satisfaction? And they set that as a target. And it might be based on that research of what other service providers in the similar sectors are performing at, and they'll use that number as a target, and anything below that becomes a fail, because they have failed to achieve what is considered to be a standard, an accepted measure of customer satisfaction. And why that is important is because customers are consuming services not just from one service provider, but they are consuming them from a diverse set of service providers. And from that consumption, it informs their expectation, because what the customer now does is, if I go to Home Affairs, I'm going to wait for 15 minutes. But when I go to Ministry of Agriculture to apply for a fishing license, I'm waiting for 2 hours. And already that informs the customer to start complaining and saying, but why are you providing this type of service? Because I only wait for 15 minutes at one service provider, but now you are saying I should wait for 2 hours. So again, that makes the customer to demand a higher standard of service. And if you have not set your service quality and your delivery mechanisms to meet those requirements, you will fail to meet the targets that you are setting for yourselves. I hope that answers your question, Jonette. Okay. I'll move on to the next slide. Okay, so what is Namibia hoping for in terms of citizen strategy, citizen satisfaction strategy? So citizen satisfaction strategy is recognized in the Harambee Prosperity Plan 2, which is running from 2021 to 2025. And if we look in this document, in the effective performance pillar, goal number 4 talks about enhanced citizen participation and engagement. And under that, we have activity 3, which talks about developing a citizen satisfaction survey, CSS tool, to conduct citizen satisfaction survey once during the Harambee Prosperity Plan 2 period. which is a 5-year period, a 4-year period. And the idea is that at least there should be a survey conducted in this period. And the outcome of that is to implement remedial action plans based on survey outcomes. And I'll touch on that a bit. So in terms of the way you would measure citizen satisfaction, it's very important that you get actionable insights. By actionable insights, we're talking about if a customer, for example, says, I'm not happy with government services. That is not actionable because that's too general. We wouldn't know what to do to fix that. So in terms of our survey design, it's very important that we understand the touch points. So let me introduce this concept of touch point. So I'm coming from a company called Touchpoint Management Institute. The touch point is an interface between a service provider and a customer or a receiver of the service. And why touch point is important is because my perception is a service, is a receiver of a service, or as a customer, or as a citizen, is going to be formed from the touch point interaction. So when I'm going to Home Affairs, the way I'm treated at the gate by the security or whoever is letting me in, they have a queuing system, the amount of time I wait in the queue, the aircon, the quality of the tiles or how clean the place is, how I'm addressed by the person who's servicing me, the voice, the tone, the professionalism, all these things are the things that are going to either create satisfaction within me as a citizen or customer, or they are going to create dissatisfaction. So a touch point is the object to which we can start attaching perceptions that customers have. So it's not good enough for a customer, for a citizen to say, I'm not happy with government services. We need them to be specific and say, I was at Home Affairs in Independence Avenue at the head office, and the aircon or the place is dirty or filthy, or I was at counter number 6 and the person that was servicing me there was very rude. Then we are pinpointing where the issue is. And in terms of actionable insights, that allows us to do something about that situation. Because the whole reason why we are measuring is because we want to improve the service. We are measuring because we want to do something about it. We want to fix whatever is wrong. And if we measure and everything is right, then we want to know what is right so that we can keep doing it. So when the citizen satisfaction survey is going to be rolled out for this period, the most important thing that is required there is, in order to be able to obtain remedial action plans, we need to have questions formulated in a way that we can gather actionable insights that allow us to know exactly where we need to go and address issues that have been identified. As I indicated earlier, the first citizen satisfaction was done in 2017, and 54% was obtained. Now, this is quite low, and this can be interpreted in 2 ways. So we can say, for example, the level of satisfaction of Namibian citizens with public services is at 54%. Or you can say 54% of the people that were surveyed are happy with the services that are delivered by the public service providers. The right way to interpret it is that the satisfaction rating, and here I'm going to use a scale. So consider that the government is writing a test, and the citizens are the ones who are marking the test. the government then is said to have achieved 54% out of 100. So it's 5.4 out of 10 or 54 out of 100. And if you consider that it's just above a pass, most pass marks are from 50%, depending on which institution you go to. So 50% would be considered a pass, but that's not very good. 60%, at least you are starting to get to a point where somebody can really appreciate that you know what you're doing. So in terms of good performance starts at 60%. So the fact that citizens only gave government 54% is a good indicator that there's room for improvement. And a good target that I would recommend, for example, is to say we need to be trending in at least from 54, we need to be going to 60%, and probably before the end of the next 5 years, we need to be trending between 60 and 70%. And other countries that are really doing well in citizen satisfaction are above 70s. Okay, I see the
Mr. Victor.
Yes.
The research on the 54%, was this like done on all ministries, or was it only specific ones where a lot of people use it? Or
yeah, very good question. And I'm going to touch on that in my next slide. Maybe I should just go to that slide. Okay, so you're asking a very relevant question, and this is key. So in terms of research, so that 54% that was obtained, it's an outcome of research. So you are conducting a survey, and then you are looking for a result. And the result that we are looking for is called overall citizen satisfaction rating. So it's one number. It was obtained to be 54%. So the question that we need to ask in terms of research is that, is this number valid? And is this number reliable? So what is validity? So validity in terms of research is the accuracy to which the citizen satisfaction rating represents the actual satisfaction of Namibian citizens with public services. So how do we achieve this? How do we measure this? What is key here is we need to look at how we are doing our sampling. Are we representing all government service providers? Government service providers, public service providers, for example, you are looking at clinics, and if you are looking at clinics, do you have a good representation of clinics? Let's say there is 500 clinics in Namibia. How did you choose which clinics to survey? And in terms of quantitative data, which is what we are working with here, what is important is we need to make sure that we are getting random sampling, that there is every item in the population or every element of the population has an equal chance of being in the sample. So the sampling needs to be done in such a way that it's representative across the different service providers. So I gave an example of clinics. So within the health services, you have clinics, you have hospitals, you have referral hospitals, and you have the bigger hospitals. And what sort of sampling mechanism are you using to ensure that you have a representation such that when you get a number that represents how satisfied citizens are with health services, that number is a valid number because it was obtained in a way that the hospitals had, the hospitals are represented, the clinics are represented across the whole country. And this is where I was saying citizen satisfaction is a very complex phenomenon to operationalize. I mean, that was just health services. If you think about education, we have to look at pre-primary school. We have to look at primary schools. We have to look at secondary schools. We have to look at tertiary institutions. We have to look at vocationals, universities, colleges, agricultural colleges. So you are looking at all these institutions that are delivering educational services. And you're saying, how are we going to sample to ensure that our sample is representative of the feeling of these people in terms of how satisfied they are with the education services that are being delivered to them? So it's indeed a very complex phenomena to operationalize, but it's something that is required if we have to get a valid and reliable measure of citizen satisfaction. So the question that we are asking here is, are we using the right tools to measure? Is our data the right data, and is it informing exactly what we are trying to measure? Essentially, in very simplistic terms, what we are trying to measure is a rating that shows us how satisfied Namibians are with public services. It might sound very simple, but operationalizing that is very complex. Again, I was talking about education. You can go to health services. You can go to Home Affairs. You can go to the police. You can go to Namibian Defense Force. So there is a wide variety of service providers that have to be included in the survey to make sure that we are representing everything that has to do with public services in Namibia. The other element of it is reliability. And in terms of reliability, we're talking about the extent to which the citizen satisfaction rating can be consistently reproduced. So here we are just saying we must make sure that the way we have designed our methodology of measuring is done in such a way that if we have to keep measuring, like if we have to measure, if we are measuring every 6 months, you don't want this month, the first time you are measuring, you're getting 54%. The next period, 6 months after that, when we measure, we are getting 86%. Then another 6 months after that, you are getting 2%. So you want to make sure that the tool that you are using, the way you are doing the measurement, is in such a way that it's a good representation of what is being measured, and you can reproduce these results every time you measure with a good accuracy or a good predictability, and you don't have a big variation in terms of every time you measure, you are either deviating too far from the previous result you got. So you are essentially have to be moving towards the average or the mean, which is a good representation of the actual thing that we are trying to measure. Okay, any questions?
Yes, another okay. I don't know if this is now a question or a thought, because as a service provider, I'm thinking you try also, I mean, with regard to the research that has been done that brought that 54% result, I'm sure the government has been trying to get on pair with what the customers want, or let's say in a certain section at a hospital, you bring in beds, 10 yes. beds, because people were complaining.
Yes.
But then also you have the customers or the people that are being provided the service, they don't also take care of the things provided. And by the time another research is done, these things, they're not in the shape that they were in. And now it's like taking back the government, then now they have to buy these things over and over again, because I see in some ministries, there has been improvement done, yes. But still it's like between now the customers, also when you come there, they are always in a hurry and still they are being not satisfied. So what can one do? I don't know if this is now taking you back to have a customer fully satisfied, because I feel at this point it's very hard to satisfy a customer, because now you were also talking about guiding or guiding an institution to a customer's expectations. But if the government is trying a little bit, but the people are still not taking care of the things that the government is trying to provide for them. So this is still having the government or the service provider, let's say for an institution, at the same spot. So the 54%, I think it's a two-way thing. If a customer who's being provided also to take care of the things that are being provided, for the government to move on to the next problem that the people might have.
Very good question, Mr. Rireka. And so this whole concept of citizen satisfaction it's a management philosophy. And by that, what I mean is, when we measure how satisfied customers or citizens are, we can use that insight to manage our organizations differently. So when this is applied to, for example, in private organizations, it allows you to focus on what is important for the customer. So what you are doing is, you want to identify what are the things that my customers care about. And then you dedicate most of your resources to those things. And after you have dedicated most of your resources to those things, the next iteration of that is you want to standardize the way the service is delivered, and you want to standardize the management process of delivering that service. So you want to ensure that, for example, I'll give an example of, so in the private sector, you might have a situation where a branch manager says, my waiting time for anybody that comes to the branch is going to be 5 minutes. Then that becomes a management tool that the manager uses to say, continuously, no matter what happens, I have to ensure that anybody that comes in the branch is only waiting for 5 minutes, because I've measured this, and over time, I've seen that when customers wait for 5 minutes, they're going to be happy with the service. So by measuring, you are not then going to put effort to say, we must reduce it to 2 minutes, because you know 5 minutes is what is good enough. So you don't have to now spend extra effort to do things that might not bring more satisfaction to the customer. So it releases your resources to go and do other resources. So with regards to the question that you are asking, is that we need to understand what are the minimum things that citizens want? What are the minimum things that customers want? Once we have those things in place, then we need to maintain that standard. And by maintaining that standard, like the hospital beds example that you gave, is then we have to have a management process of saying the quality of these beds needs to remain in this standard, because we know this is what customers expect. And then we can then go and focus on other things, and this becomes a maintenance process. So we don't have to buy 15 beds, for example, to make the citizens happy, because we know 10 is enough, but now we have to ensure that the 10 remains in a state or a condition that customers can continue to be happy with. So it's almost like it allows you to start fixing things in terms of what is important for our customers, put it in place, and then put a management and maintenance process around that thing to ensure that it remains like that, so that customers or citizens will always be happy with that regards in terms of service. I hope that answers your question.
No, you did. So can we, as an institution or any service provider, do we still stick to the idea of that customers are always right?
Very good question. So I'm an advocate for customers, and I always say customers are not always right, and I give examples.
Okay.
I give examples. For example, I mean, I'm working with a team of people who are servicing customers, And one thing that I won't tolerate in terms of a customer being right is when a customer abuses or is being rude to a service, to one of the frontline people.
Yeah.
They can have a reason, but we all must treat each other as human beings, and you must earn the respect. You cannot disrespect someone as a customer because that person is a service provider. And just because you are frustrated with something, with something that they have done, there is a way to deal with that. So there is situations where a customer has the right to be angry, but the way they express that anger is more important. So we're not saying you are right, you are always right. We are saying you have rights as customers, and you have certain demands that you can make to organizations. But in the end, the organization is represented by human beings, and you need to treat the human being as a human being. You need to treat them with respect, no matter how angry you are. Because remember, when you are addressing this person, you are venting or you are frustrated with the organization, and you are now putting this poor person as if they are the ones who are the organization. And it can be very painful for a person who's helpless as a customer service agent, and you have this customer who's frustrated and insulting them. And in those situations, I cannot take it that the customer is right, and I always defend the people who are providing the service. But also, organizations have an obligation of creating processes that can allow customers to feel heard. Customers are not necessarily people that will just get angry if there is a platform through which they can communicate. If there is a proper complaint management process defined in place, the customer can follow that process. But if the customer is trying to get the attention of the organization and they are being pushed from pillar to pillar, it can lead to frustration where they now lose their temper and it becomes an exchange.
Okay. With also the trainings that we do give, there were a lot of complaints because we do this customer service trainings, and
Yes.
a lot of complaints that do come is that customers, regardless if there's a thing of I know who in the business or in this section, and so because I know that person, I can do whatever it is that I want to do here. And so that also is a complaint. But I from the presentation, I see that there is indeed a need for a customer service training that needs to be done to people to how to handle these customers if they do come and they misbehave. But yeah, so thank you.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay. No, thank you very much for that. Maybe just to top it off as well. So I'm passionate about the role that customer service plays in an individual's life. And by this, I mean, the people that work in customer service roles
Yes.
probably have the highest chance in interacting with different types of people from different types of, from different walks of life. And why this is important is human beings, we thrive on relationships and we thrive on understanding other human beings. And I always encourage my team to say, if you want to grow as an individual and you are in a customer service role, learn to have empathy for every customer that you deal with. And empathy, especially when you are doing in outbound, when you are in inbound operations. By inbound operations, I mean, if you are working in a role where customers are coming to you, they could be calling you, they could be sending an email, they could be walking in. That customer has taken time out of their busy life to come and interact with your organization. And when they are coming to interact with your organization, they have a very specific outcome that they need. And your role as a customer service agent is to help them to achieve that outcome. And when you have empathy, it's already by appreciating that this customer has taken time. Empathy puts you in a position where you are better set, you are better equipped to deliver a service, and the customer is better equipped to interact with you if you demonstrate empathy, because what you are saying now to the customer is, you know, I appreciate you having taken time, or maybe it's even something has gone wrong because your company's product or service didn't work the way it was supposed to work, and the customer is frustrated. By demonstrating empathy, you build rapport. And once you build rapport, that is a cornerstone of any relationship. You need to get the other person to feel appreciated and to feel valued before the conversation goes on. And if you do that as a foundation and you master that skill, in any environment, even outside your job, you'll be able to achieve so much more through other human beings, because you cannot achieve things in this world by operating alone. You always need to work with other people. And if you master a skill of having these people coming at you every day, every hour, and being able to create some sort of working rhythm through which they walk away, they came in frustrated and they walk away happy and thanking you for the way you have delivered the service, you are on your way to achieving bigger things in life. Okay. Then one thing that I want to touch on in terms of a discussion, and this is more just general questions, so I guess people could just think about it. And for the people that are watching online and stuff, you can put questions, we'll come back there and answer some of the questions. And the idea here is to kickstart conversations about citizen satisfaction and understand what role it plays, and understand that it's probably one of the best things as a tool that we can use to improve the quality of life for everybody across the country. Because if we think about quality of life, how do we measure it? We measure it by how satisfied citizens are with the services that are being provided. The bulk of our happiness or our well-being as citizens is being provided through public services. If we have a way of measuring the quality of service or measuring the satisfaction of customers or citizens with different public service providers, and if we come up, this is more of my vision, if we come up with every entity has a way of measuring customer satisfaction. If I go to a clinic, after I visit a clinic, I can give a rating to the clinic in terms of how satisfied I am with the service. If I go to the municipality, I can rate the service of that municipality. If I go to a school, I can rate the service of that school. Whatever service I receive, I should be given an opportunity as a citizen to give a rating in terms of how satisfied I am with that service. For me, that would be a much more robust way of measuring satisfaction. As I said earlier, that we need to create a platform on which citizens can freely give feedback rather than having to wait to be surveyed. So instead of soliciting feedback, we need to get feedback platforms available so that at any time during my interaction with the service provider, I have an opportunity to provide feedback, and I have an opportunity to provide suggestions on how the service could be improved. And a communication channel can then be created with the people that need to fix things within the organization, can then either call me and say, you are not happy with the service that we provided. How can we do it better? If we get to that stage, we'll then have a good representation of how satisfied our citizens are. And the good thing about that is if somebody is very happy about a service, they are likely to talk about it. If somebody is not very happy about a service, they are also very likely to talk about it. So we just need to make sure that we catch those words and we use them to measure overall satisfaction across the board.
But then also, I think we find boxes at ministries. Do
Yeah.
customers take time to do this? Because I mean, we don't have any other way right now, but the ways that we do have, I don't know. I doubt that they do use these facilities that that the government has provided.
Yeah.
And so there's limited to the government also trying to satisfy these people. You find one or two papers, if none at all, in a whole month, and you see a lot of customers coming in and out. So at what point does the service provider know what is the problem? Or do you mean like immediately when I'm having an interaction with the service provider, they give me like something to write on, but then again, people don't like writing? Do we give them a tablet? Yeah. So
Yes.
with the whole corona thing now, nobody wants to interact with anybody. So it's quite
very good question, Ms. Serereka. And with technology where we are now, we could use technology to do that. I mean, MTC is doing this service. If you visit an MTC mobile home, after the service, they'll ask you a question: are you satisfied with the service you received? Yes or no? And then you can respond via SMS. We have smartphones. People could use smartphones. So essentially, I would say the thing about customers providing feedback is they'll only keep doing it when they see that it is being actioned, it is being valued. I'll provide feedback once, but if I don't hear from you, or if I don't see it being taken into consideration, I won't put effort to do it next time. Suggestion boxes are, for me, they're archaic. They might probably, some organizations, you might put a document there, like a suggestion, and it's only opened once every year when they have to do their annual performance reviews and everything. So you have a lot of challenges with regards to that. But also another opportunity in terms of technology is that you centralize this, because you don't want the same service provider to also have access to the feedback, because I would then look at the feedback, and if they say I didn't do a good service, I'll just throw it away so that nobody knows about it. But if you have some sort of centralized platform, this feedback goes to a centralized platform, and you can have a monthly report that assigns satisfaction ratings to every service provider and say, this is how you are performing. So it's really, it's a big project to operationalize, but there is a lot of value in it. And it can become a basis through which you are measuring performance of your service providers. Because remember, all these service providers only exist for the customer. So how good are they at delivering on their mandate should be measured from the lens of the customer. So if we don't have a view, we can measure internally and we say we are doing everything well and everything, but is the customer happy with what you're doing? So are you doing the right things? So it's very important that we move towards measuring how customers perceive the service that they receive, and use that as a way to give performance bonuses, use that as a way to evaluate the performance of our internal teams. Okay, so I've put a couple of questions there, something to ponder on and drive the conversation after we are done with the webinar. So the first one is very simple. What does citizen satisfaction mean to you as an Namibian citizen? And what do you think? How does it drive you? Which follows on to the second question of, does your satisfaction as a citizen influence your willingness to pay taxes? So if you are a taxpayer, are you much more motivated when you receive good service from a public service provider? Do you then feel like, wow, my tax money is being put to good use, I can't wait to pay again? And the last question is much more of a controversial one, which is the relationship between public trust and the ruling party's likelihood to stay in power. So at any time you have a ruling party is always, when people say the government is not doing a good job, like now, because the ruling party is SWAPO, they say this SWAPO government. So when the next time you are voting, are you going to think about how satisfied you are with the public services? And is that going to make you choose a different political party to come into power or not? There's a lot of other questions that we can ask here, but essentially it's really around how satisfied you are has an influence on how you perceive things or the governance of the country or the quality of life for that country. We could add things, for example, is things like stability can come in here. Stability, for example, is very important, like for foreign investors. If a country has a higher citizen satisfaction and foreign investor can trust that number, for example, if we were rating in 60 or not in 70 or 80%, any investor would know that there is good governance in that country and I can put my money there without risking it because I know citizens are happy with the services. If you look at what is happening now in South Africa, that is a good indication that citizens are not satisfied with public service providers and they would destroy the burn schools. They are burning infrastructure. They are destroying infrastructure because they feel they are not part of that infrastructure or that infrastructure is not delivering value to them. So this concept of citizen satisfaction, it's really one of the tools that we can use to transform our country into a better country where citizens are much happier. And that's the end of my presentation.
Thank you. I do not have any more questions this side.
Okay.
Facebook, are there questions? Any more questions? Are we gonna wait for 2 minutes?
I think we can wait for 2 minutes and then maybe we could also continue on the online platform so people are still free to engage. I mean, the webinar is gonna be there, so people can always ask questions, always go back there and try to answer those questions.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
I personally think it's very hard as a service provider, but in also to appreciate the service that one should. I would genuinely encourage customers who are given a service to also speak up, and when you know that in this section you're doing something good, then you know that I'm doing something good in that, and then ask also, and you probe like, what can I do better to even have you have a high expectation in something that I would provide also. What are your needs, or go beyond? But I really hope going forward with everything changing that we are going to adapt also, which is, I mean, technology and all of these things, because we were stuck into another world and now we're going into another world where it's going to be computer-based. Like we see Mr. Victor here is at home.
Yes.
So yeah, it's I think it's, imagine now you have to provide a service and you are at home.
Yep.
You don't have this, because now we're moving from having direct interaction with people to, okay, just call. And now you cannot even get a hold of this person in the office. And now you're frustrated. And now it's the whole ministry. I don't want to go to that ministry because these people are not picking up my calls. So exactly. Yeah, I think also as customers, people must just try to understand that there are things that are changing and it's not our fault, because all of us are trying to adapt to the new environment, the new technology that we are going to embark on, really.
Very, very good point. That also brings that element of educating customers. If your environment is changing, if your service delivery mechanisms are changing, educate customers to guide their expectations. There is really a lot of value in guiding expectations, because once customers understand, sometimes it's just apologizing. I mean, you go to an office and the office is closed, but there is no notice that says the person will be back in 5 minutes. Or in a lot of government offices, you say, I'll be back in 5 minutes. And you go there and you wait for 2 hours and the person is back in 5 minutes, but 2 hours has passed and the person is not back. So you really have to just make sure that you are communicating any changes in terms of the standard service that is expected in order to guide those expectations. Yeah, but this was a brilliant conversations.
It was. If I could go on with customer service, I would not end. It would, because there are so many questions and how you want to satisfy people's needs and wants at the same time. But you can never do all of this. As I genuinely feel it's like a two-way thing.
Yes.
You bring in your part and I bring in mine for me to be able to help me provide for you. So
yes. And in another session, I think we can talk about customer engagement or an engaged customer. So engaged customer, we are getting to a point where the customer is the co-creator of the experience that is produced. So the customer then is taking an active role in participating and is enabled by organizations to say, come to the party, tell us how we can do this better. And then you have this collaboration and co-creation that creates ultimately the best experience, because you don't have assumptions from both sides. Everybody is bringing themselves to the table and say, this is what we can do. This is what we would like to do. And then you have that co-creation.
And also now that with everything that is changing, with having, for example, online classes and all of these things, is you come to an institution, you say, I'm interested in this customer care platform that you do offer, but I would like to know how are you guys going to provide this service to us, because we are not equipped with all of these things. Is there any way that you can do this for us, or so we can try to help you in a sense? Yes. So I would, this, like I said, Mr. Victor, this can go on all day, but yes.
Okay.
But yeah, thank you very much for.
A pleasure.
I personally got a lot of information from it, and certainly will have you back. Yeah, thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you for the opportunity, and let's keep the conversation going.
All right. Without keeping you guys anymore, we can still engage on our social platforms. Do you mind giving out your information, whether maybe other customers or other people who want more information from you?
I don't mind giving my information. So I'm on LinkedIn, Victor Musiwa. I'm on Facebook, I'm on Twitter. So you can find me there and we can start the conversation.
All right, thank you so much. So that brings us to the end of this webinar. And I look forward to talking about more topics. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you very much. Yes.